Okay. Alright. It's like 2 in the morning. What time is it? 3:15? Okay, I guess one more time. I've almost had it. You good? Alright. Sweet.
It's always a treat when I'm given an opportunity like this, a treat I take my time to enjoy. When I become a part of a project to bring forth something the game of Airsoft has been asking for throughout the years. You can call the demand unimpressive if you like to, but now that this Russian-inspired replica is available to the world, I think we have a new contender for yet another legendary gas blowback SMG. This is my review of the Modify PP-2000. Created to be Russia's H&K MP7 or FNP90, the KBP Instrument Design Bureau PP-2000 utilizes 9x19 parabellum as the ammunition of choice when not being used with armor-piercing rounds. Designed in the year 2000 and being produced in 2006 to the current day, the PP-2000's lore was created by its compact size and for its easy-to-acquire ammunition. Those who take part in close quarters engagements, VIP protection, and armored vehicle crews would favor this submachine gun, even with its odd placement of the reciprocating charging handle and the interesting slot in the rear of the frame that would accept a 44-round magazine that would then be used as a stock. This would become an infamous feature of the PP-2000. With its simple design and a simple breakdown, with its reliability that would be counted on by several high-standing individuals, the PP-2000 would become one of the 2 primary SMGs in Russian service in 2006 alongside the PP-19 Vitnyaz. Even now, the PP-2000 can be found in the hands of the Russian Ministry of Internal Affairs and in police forces. Starting this in-depth review, where we always begin, we focus our attention to the plastic hard case this machine pistol arrived in. This begins the many differences that you may encounter with the package you received, as I was sent this gas blowback from Modify themselves with several attachments, magazines, and other material. Opening the case by sliding these 2 tabs may reveal just the PP-2000 and a standard 23-round magazine, or it may come with an extra magazine or even an extended 56-round CO2 magazine. Even special variants exist, so it all dwindles down to what you order or what you pick out at your local Airsoft store. However, the most standard package bears just the PP-2000 in black with a short 23-round green gas magazine that's been protected by the thick foam lining of the case. This foam can be altered to make for a better fit if you so choose to continue to use it to transport this replica, like I do with the extra magazines inside. Under the foam, against the top half of the case, should be a Ziploc bag containing the extras that Modify includes with every PP-2000. This would include 2 PVC patches, one meant distinctly for the PP-2000, a sticker of the Modify logo, a red dead rag, an Allen wrench for adjusting the hop-up, and finally a thorough paperback manual that will go over every major function, stat, breakdown, magazine functions, hop-up adjustments, part diagrams, and it'll even have an exploded view of the PP-2000 in the back. Not many manufacturers take the time to include a manual of this caliber, so I definitely appreciate it that Modify went this far. The only thing I can pick on here is that having the information translated to Spanish, Japanese, French, or other languages would have been great to include. But when that's the only thing I have to say, then you know you're doing a good job. As for the first impressions, this package starts off strong with the inclusion of the padded hard case with cutouts for locks and all the extra goodies like the patches inside. The SMG itself continues the trend for being the very first PP-2000 in the Airsoft world. Looking past that hype, the impressions still continue positively. As for a $300 full travel gas blowback SMG, the build construction is up to par or even above so. The polymer frame is sturdy and unbendable with normal force even along the thinnest areas like the magwell or the flashlight mount socket. And several parts are crafted from steel, like the front sight, the flash hider, the suppressor brace arm, the takedown socket that's built into the aluminum outer barrel, the entire stock, the trunnion holding the barrel assembly to the steel hop-up housing, the trigger pack apart from the actual trigger itself, and the spring guide inside. Of course, the pins and screws are also made from steel, with everything else being crafted from aluminum from the upper receiver, the outer barrel, top rail, the exposed charging handle assembly, the mock bolt carrier, trigger, the magazine shells, and the suppressor. Only two things stand out that affect the positives. The first being how easy the charging handle roll pin backs out from its mounting holes, causing it to tilt like this, and how wobbly the stock is, to the point that it bangs against the lower when folded, and tilts up and down, making the iron sights utterly useless when extended. Moving on to the measurements, a naked modified PP-2000 will weigh in at 2 pounds 14.2 ounces. Removing the stock will drop the weight to 2 pounds 0.5 ounces, meaning the steel stock comes in at 13.6 ounces. For the people concerned about magazine weights, we can see that mags can be around a third of the weight when empty. The suppressor was also weighed in at 9 ounces, and so was the case at 2 pounds 3.9 ounces empty and 5 pounds 11.2 ounces with the PP-2000 and a short green gas magazine inside. Then ending this segment, each magazine, the exclusive PP-2000 suppressor, and the PP-2000 itself was measured. Focusing our attention at the very end of the barrel, we see the proper steel flash hider that's been completely painted in blaze orange for this US model. This is only true for the models that must be painted to comply with US regulations, and not for others that are not confronted with such restrictions. However, if you have no desire to keep this flash hider on, then feel free to replace it after removing the 1.5mm grub screw that secures it to the 14mm counterclockwise threads. Thankfully, these are the standard threads, which will make customization much easier on common players and enthusiasts, or for those who simply wish to equip the suppressor that Modify has made available for this replica. This entirely aluminum-built mock suppressor was foam-filled straight out of the box, surprisingly, which should dampen the report a bit, but not significantly, as this is a gas blowback after all. Most of the sound this replica produces is coming from the bolt's travel and the gas making its way through the system, but I still appreciate the thought. Screwing this into the threads is easy, but please tighten it down firmly, making sure to line up the bridge with the steel bar protruding from the left side of the front sight. Failure to do so will cause BBs to hit the rim of the opening at the end of the suppressor. This can cause BBs to shatter or even damage the end cap if not done right. Inside of the aluminum outer barrel should be an aluminum 6.03mm 150mm long inner barrel. This can be replaced with a 300mm inner barrel of the same inner circumference thanks to Modify themselves, as they offer that piece, so it can be paired with the same suppressor that we saw a bit ago, effectively doubling your inner barrel's length. This gives you the option to either go with a bit of silence with a smaller piece of kit, or a more accurate replica with nearly 10 inches at the end of the barrel. I have to give Modify credit for that one. I love having options and parts available to choose from right from the get-go. Connected to the barrel would be your front sight that's only adjustable for elevation. Taking a close look, anyone who's handled an AK should be familiar with a sight like this one. This front sight, although basic, is much more capable than the steel rear sight that's built onto the receiver just in front of a 4¼ Picatinny rail. Unlike the Battlefield series, the iron sights aren't as clear or even as useful for us airsofters. Any full-face mask user will find these sights to be utterly useless with the stock deployed, even with its slight angle. I don't fault Modify for this, as the PP-2000 is almost always used with the sight on the rail. I would definitely recommend you do the same to make the most of this SMG. Be sure to add that sight further forward on the rail, a bit on why later on. The last of the features up front is an important one, the two-piece exposed reciprocating charging handle assembly. At the very end, we have an ambidextrous textured handle held on by a roll pin. You can use this to pull back the full travel mock bolt when in a fire selection other than safe. Keep in mind that there isn't a bolt hold open anywhere to speak of on this replica, nor can the bolt fall forward again on an empty magazine. You'll need to remove the empty magazine for the bolt to fall. and the selector switch will not allow you to swap into safe if the bolt locked back while in full auto. This may only be true for my model, but this is a very unlikely action you'll need to take if your bolt is still locked back. Skipping over to the rear of the modified PP-2000 and flipping open the all-steel stock, we'd see the extent of its abilities already. This stock came without any grip for your shoulder to go against. It cannot be adjusted for length or for height. It can only be swung over to the right side to make this a much smaller package, or removed with the push of this button. The stock, as mentioned before, is the most wobbly part on the entire SMG, and will eventually leave a mark on the polymer body. You may find yourself adding tape or some other material onto the end of the stock to close the gap and clean up the wobble. Being made from steel, removing the stock balances the PP-2000 in the middle, or just over your hand when holding onto the pistol grip. Now, just like the real Russian PDW, this slot can be filled with an upturned magazine. This doesn't give you a longer platform for your shoulder to rest on, but it does give you a bit of texture, along with a lot more wobble. The angle is much more dramatic, meaning you'd actually be better off using an extended magazine as a stock if you wish to use a full face mask. You can do this with all style of magazines from Modify. However, using a standard mag is quite pointless. Again, I'm happy to see this feature included, even if it's not very practical, since it's realistic to the real article. The lower half of the PP2K, although blank on the right side, only features the bare essentials on the left side. From the back to the front, we see the push button to remove the steel stock, a steel sling loop, the steel fire selector, a textured pistol-style steel magazine release, the steel trigger, and the takedown lever inside the flashlight mounting slot. For sling points, the PP-2000 does come with a swappable steel loop that can be removed after pulling a small C-ring and pulling the loop out from the SMG itself. You can also replace it with an aftermarket QD sling slot that doubles as a hook for the polymer holster. Both of these accessories are offered by Modify, continuing the trend of cover all the bases. To use this holster, the QD slot must be empty so it can easily slide into this point. Now you can see why having whatever sight you add onto this replica placed at the very front of the Picatinny rail is a must. The magazine release is another swappable control with the use of some basic tools. Just use an Allen wrench to push the spring out of the release and swap it around. Trying to use a PP-2000 as a lefty is near impossible because of this one control if left stock. But it's not much of a bother to convert if you have the patience. Giving the lower a quick glance, I'll explain that this texturing looks to be perfectly replicated according to Google Images, but that's not to say that it's very aggressive. The vertical cuts in the grip do a much better job of helping you keep this SMG on target when in full auto. The markings near the second large sling loop in the grip are identical to the real PP-2000s, unlike the trademarks on the upper. As for the fire selector, it can be rounded off by just saying, it's brilliant. Just like the selections on the traditional AK, the selections go from safe, full auto, and semi at the very bottom. This will cause you to make a much more conscious effort to select full auto, so as to conserve ammunition, and for safe to semi swaps to be as easy as all the way up or all the way down. The click of the fire selector is very positive thanks to a steel ball bearing, and with the cleverly painted dots, any user can make an educated guess of what fire mode they're in. Leaving the magazines for the end of this segment, I think it's time that we take apart this modified PP-2000 by pushing forward on the takedown lever and pulling up on the upper. Just be sure to charge the replica first to make this a little bit easier. Inside, Modify didn't spare any expenses or any steel to craft the trigger mechanism, the realistically designed hammer, the valve knocker, or even to craft the buffer system. Pushing the mock bolt carrier through the upper receiver, I noticed only the rollers and the gas valve knocker were made from steel, while the rest of the blowback housing was made from aluminum. The main spring and guide were entirely made from steel, with the hop-up housing being crafted from aluminum and the hop-up pressure plate being made of plastic. To adjust this top-down center hop-up, a 2.5mm Allen wrench will be needed, just like the one that we found in the baggie that we opened up earlier in the case. There's no need to break down the PP-2000 to this point. Using these holes that run through the lower will guide you to the adjustment screw to alter the amount of hop applied. This is where a major difference in pre-release samples has thrown off future buyers, since this specific model and several others were equipped with the blue hop-up bucking called the Predator. This bucking was made to help guide along BBs of 0.4 grams and higher.
not the more traditional .2s, .28s, or 32s. I can't say I know why these buckings were used with pre-release samples, but Modify was quick to replace these with a tan bucking to make all PP-2000s meant for the market usable with traditional weight BBs. Bear this in mind when judging consistency and range in this review or any other review. You should only be judging these traits if the replica the reviewer is using will be the exact same as yours. And I would like to ask that anyone who does a future review on a modified PP-2000 express what bucking is inside the model being tested due to Modify's switch in buckings. With the features and functions of the PP-2000 gone over, we're left with the variety of magazines and the flashlight accessory offered by Modify. This aluminum-bodied flashlight is to be powered by 3 CR123 batteries that can be activated by either the push of this button or with a pressure pad that plugs into the rear end cap. I do appreciate the threads being protected by a rubber O-ring to keep out moisture, but one major flaw is unacceptable to me. Despite how it's mounted into the PP-2000's grip mount or how it's tightened, the bracket that holds the light can never be tightened enough to properly hold onto the light. The only way I found to combat this is to apply tape to the body of the light to bridge the gap inside the bracket. Airsoft Mike had this same problem, and he solved it with the same solution. But this problem shouldn't need to be solved. It shouldn't be there in the first place. So if Modify isn't doing anything to change this, then now is the time to start. But for our lineup of magazines, Modify does a great job of offering variety. Power sources and magazine capacity are both optional. These magazines come constructed of an aluminum body with textured plastic base plates that slip over ridges built onto the base of the magazine itself. Some reports have exclaimed issues with these base plates being easy to crack and break away from the magazine, or of them slipping off the magazine very easily. As you can see, I haven't had any of these issues yet, but I can see how it can happen as the spring and the plastic guide hold these base plates in place. Keeping quality control in mind, I'd say that the construction of the magazine is overall very solid, but there is that problem with the base plates. But the removal of the green gas internals is straightforward with 4 screws below and 2 push pins above. Gas consumption, on the other hand, was surprising with each of the magazine types. The standard 23 round green gas magazine lacked in efficiency compared to many other replicas I've tested, scoring only 23, 29, and 40 rounds before running empty in a 74° Fahrenheit room. It's still enough to complete a full mag, but these magazines did give me trouble here and there during games. They just have a hard time taking in a gas fill sometimes. I've tried purging the short mags, keeping them wet with silicone, but it doesn't improve my trust in them much. A side note, I was only able to load these magazines with 21 rounds without force. The extended magazine, however, isn't concerning. It's actually impressive, if anything, at 88 to even 120 shots fired on a single gas fill, and 75 to 92 shots with the CO2 version. As silly as these might look, they can really make the PP-2000 shine, since 100 plus shots with a full travel gas blowback is a huge success. This will definitely be an easy strength to mention in the conclusion. Setting up my Ace Tech chronograph and gathering .2s, .28s, and .32 gram BBs, readings never substantially rose above US CQB limits at 350. You can take your pick of which of these tests to focus on the most, and how much of a difference in power there is from the first shot to the last shots taken. I would personally use, at the very least, .32 gram BBs with mine to make the most of the range I'm offered, but it's good to know that this would make for a good option for CQB games here in the United States. Filling a 21 round magazine with .4 gram BBs, 100 feet was an easy task. Again, bear in mind that I'm using a pre-production model with Modify's Predator bucking. This would be the reason I have to use .4 gram BBs. Using .28 grams or even .2s would be pointless, as they would be sent to the moon. At 150 feet, shots are again easy to pull off if you have a steady hand. I would say that I'm really impressed, but that would only be true for mine due to the aforementioned bucking. Please reference the other reviews on YouTube to get a much more clearer picture of the range and accuracy that you should be getting with a proper modified PP-2000. I'm not in the game of deceiving people, so use the links in the description to send you to more videos on this replica. Taking the PP2K back into the city and into my friend Jaime's studio, we recorded the audio levels. With Jaime's extensive equipment, we received decibel levels of .51, 1.71, 3.06, and 1.56 decibels. It's definitely a louder replica with its short barrel and steel parts, and that foam-filled suppressor sadly won't be much of help, so if this is to be your backup, don't expect to go unnoticed if you have to use it. I've followed Modify's venture into gas blowbacks ever since finding out about the PP-2000 project while watching Airsoftology, and I'm very happy that I have. After everything I've seen over the years of playing, reviewing, and researching all things Airsoft, it's nice to get a breath of fresh air with a gas blowback. By no means is this a perfect model. No Airsoft replica is, and I hope I've made that clear enough by this point. But for someone like me, I can work around most of the faults that I've found. The undeniable lack of reliability with the standard green gas magazine is a detriment. I'd even be daring to say that if you want the extended magazines, then you should just stick with those rather than rely on one of these. As for the exterior construction, well, I'm in love. I've only had the pin holding the charging handle straight walk out a bit over the course of months of me playing and studying the modified PP-2000. Styling is also great since no one else offers a PP-2000 at this point, so this will be recognized either by what it is or by the unique shape that is sure to confuse a lot of players. I even had players in Russian loadouts ask me what this was, which was pretty funny. I love the range even with this prototype model, although having to use much heavier BBs does cause a problem due to the Predator bucking, but that's something I can replace later. The case, the lack of very many wobbly parts apart from the stock and the flashlight module, all the extras that are included, and the vast support for Modify are all great things going for this new Russian PDW replica. You can make this thing look really interesting without having to overdo it. For playstyle, you'd want to run this as a backup primary, if you're either a long distance player for when enemies get too close, or as your primary in close engagements, as it's too big to be a substitute for a pistol in my opinion, unless you love the challenge or you need something for those CQC areas. Value can be reasonable as its prime competitors, the KWA and VFC MP7 and KWA KMP9, are valued at $200 to $400. Magazine prices can be crippling at $30 to $60 however, and that bumps things back down. This makes the PP-2000 by Modify sit in the middle for those keeping tabs on every coin they spent.
Look at your face. Like, what is he playing?
Unique in its construction, stellar in performance, the modified PP-2000 luckily offers a lot of great advantages. The controls and the feel may be an interesting challenge in the first few days of owning one. However, it will definitely be something to build a loadout around, or to at least complete one with. I'm definitely happy that Modify allowed me to be one of the very first persons to test and create content for it. There was a lot of hype around this release, so I did my best to cover each aspect to help people conclude if this is truly worth the cost asked. Of course, links to Modify Airsoft's website, to Airsoft GI, where you can find the PP-2000 itself, and links to reviews from Airsoft Mike, Big Bird Airsoft, Longbow BB, and to Desert Fox Airsoft will be listed in the description so you can get even more information or action shots of it if you'd like. I'd also like to ask for you to comment your thoughts about the modified PP-2000, especially if you have ideas of how to improve it. A like on this in-depth review would also be very much appreciated, as these longer essay-style reviews can take several months to organize and complete. That's why I appreciate the USAirsoft channel members the most, as they always help the channel by simply being members. They knew this video was coming out before anyone else did, and some of them even got to watch this review before anyone else because of the perks channel members get to receive. So if you really enjoy my content and you'd like to see more videos like this, then consider becoming a channel member today with the join button on the channel homepage, or with the link in the description. But until that next video drops from the city of San Antonio, this has been Scott Hollenbeck, and I will be sure to see you all next time. Alright, let's see if the short magazines can pull off a full auto mag dump. I don't think so. They're just not too reliable.
Oh, what's up? What's up, ladies? The name's Levi. I'm gonna go ahead and serenade you with some tunes. You ready?
Thank you for listening.
I got you. Thank you for listening, guys.
That's a beautiful gun.
Ah. Thank you. Thank you!